Well, it's all a bit disappointing. The good news is we managed to get back. Luckily Wendy was out, she'd taken the car, so I could just bring the bike straight on the drive and hit the kill switch. The gods certainly smiled on us today. You could see through the roundabouts and everything, plenty of time just to drift on, drift back off. And the clutch is as dead as a dodo. So we're going to have a look at that in a minute when I finish my brew. There's a couple of little things I want to do to the bike. Foot pegs are a bit short. Obviously the clutch, whatever that's going to take. Try and track down if we have an oil leak, and if so, cure that. Apart from that, the bike's pretty sound actually. So we might as well have a look at a few of these things now. The irony is, Bandit up for MOT, this now out of action, ZX in bits. How many more bikes do you need to have just to keep one on the bloody road? Anyway, I'm going to finish this off and then we'll have a little bit of a look and see if we've got any fluid. Let's start there. Catch you in a minute. It's quite an interesting thing. I don't know, some of you might know this, some of you might not. Japan has its own standard for screw heads. Okay, over the years I've used Pozidrive, I've used Phillips and wondered why I round off half the screws I attempt to undo. You need a Japanese industry standard screwdriver to work on Japanese equipment. So what we're going to do, take off the clutch, master cylinder top, and see if we've actually got any fluid in it. That'd be a good place to start. Let's have a look. Let me just get a cloth. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that. We've definitely got fluid, and see if I can get this positioned. See those air bubbles in there? We're sucking in air somewhere. See them? Sorry, it's out of focus. Let's pull back a bit. So what's happening is somewhere air's getting into the line. Further investigations. Okay, so I've checked the union bolts at the back here. No signs of leaks. I've checked the union bolts down here. No signs of leaking. The bleed nipple cap was off, but again, no signs of fluid. The other thing is where the lever, in sort of this area, pushes on to the piston that operates the cylinder. There doesn't appear to be any obvious signs of leakage from there. Okay, so we're going to go through a manual process of just bleeding this off. And what we're going to do is I'm going to open the valve with the spanner. Then I'm going to push the master cylinder, which will force a little bit of fluid into the pipe and the air out. I'll lock that off. I'll release the master so it fills from its reservoir, and we repeat that process until hopefully we start to see in the pipe some fresh fluid coming down. Now I'm doing this for two reasons. Really, I'm interested to see if the clutch comes back to life and that's the end of it. Be nice. The other thing is, if not, I'm looking to see if there is anywhere we can see brake fluid dripping. or how long it takes to dissipate. If this doesn't help, then we'll buy seal kits for both the master and the slave, and we'll just get the job done, and that'll be that. Okay, so let's start the process. Right, starting to see some fluid in the pipe there. I'm looking for air as I'm just quickly pumping that. A little bit of air's coming up through the reservoir. Let's carry on. So we've got that locked off down there. Back up here. So I've topped up the cylinder, and as you can see, when I squeeze, I'm still getting air coming out. So there are two holes. So if I can, one is the one to the left is the main hole. So as I push the lever, or pull the lever, that's where the brake fluid goes down. The one behind it is a release, to release any fluid that's got behind the seal. Now, every time I do that, a little bit of air comes out, and what you should see is more like the squirting of that fluid. So what that's telling me is possibly our master cylinders are not very good. Right, the level's back to where it should be. With a seal. Plastic retainer plate. Metal plate. What I'm going to do is put back the little nipple cap. I'll take these off, it just helps to give better clearance to get the spanners on. But you do really need to put them back. They stop all sorts of grime and crud going into that lead nipple. So it's a worthwhile thing to put back into place. There you go. So we'll keep an eye out. Hopefully we won't see any fluid dribbling, although put my glove there. Okay, are we leaking out of the bottom perhaps? Oh yes, that smells a little bit like brake fluid. Now, obviously the bike's been wet. We went through that bloody great puddle and soaked me. So, just making sure that that's dry, or as dry as it can be. Get a clean piece of tissue. Operate the lever. There you go. So just to make sure we're not being fooled, clean dry piece of tissue, operate lever. Let's just get that little bit off there. Brake fluid. Sunday, 18th of February. Miserable and rainy. 10 o'clock AM. Here we are, back with the ZZR 1100. On the bench I have a load of parts. Master cylinder overhaul, slave cylinder overhaul, new gaskety thing that we might or might not need, and of course a couple of buttons. I don't know if you can see this, but where the tank joins the frame, the fittings have been lost to time, and that means the bolt's straight into rubber. What I've got here is a couple of little hi-hat fittings that should make that a lot better. So I guess there's only one thing to do. Let's get you guys set up. Let's get the job done. So this is the problem. Without the inserts I bought, this screw can sink down into the rubber. So it's not really holding the tank on at all. The trouble is with that now, is that it's almost flush. And I don't know if I can get a socket on it so I can wind that out. So I mean, we can certainly get it out, but it's going to be tricky. Let's see what we can do. I think if I can, once we get it started, it'll be all right. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that, but I've got it going. A little bit unceremoniously, but she's starting to come out. Swap hands here. Perseverance. Okay, we can now hit that with a socket. Let's see what we can do. Side two. Wow. That's going to be more difficult. Okay, well, I don't recommend this, but if it's the only way we can do it. So I've got some very thin nose pliers which can actually fit down the side of the bolt, and that looks to be doing it. Let's try and get a picture where you can see what I can see. Okay, we've started it. The trouble is, use thin nose pliers, chances are you're going to break the tips off the pliers. So there is a fine point between functional and ruining your tools. Right, I think I've got that now. So I'm going to try a quarter drive socket. That's got it. Well, there's enough of them not sticking up. So the idea is the bolt sticks, goes through this plastic and then clamps down onto the steel tank below. But what should happen is there should be that insert so that it doesn't disappear in the plastic forever and it's more easily removed. If I get that with my fingers, yeah. There you go. All right, nice. Now hopefully the plastic hasn't been deformed and I can just slot this little thing in. Perfect. 1, 2. Let's get the bolts back in. So this has the advantage of actually holding everything down properly. This makes it all a better job. First job done. Nice. Okay guys, so this is the unit. We're going to have to remove these 3 bolts. Let's get this hose out of the way. Three bolts. We'll also need to crack off this fitting, which is the clutch fluid. And then we can take the pipe off, take this unit off, get it on the bench and see what's going to happen. I don't know if you can see it, possibly not, but I've got a bowl on the floor ready to catch brake fluid. And we'll just have to make sure anything that falls on the frame is cleared up. Okay, so better crack on. Jesus. Whoever tightened that on did a good job. Might be a little bit excessive. So as you can see, straight away we're losing fluid, which unfortunately is an inevitability, but we're in a good place with it. Excess brake fluid off my gloves. don't know if you can see that, but as I'm undoing the bolt, I can see that the plastic gasket is broken around this bolt hole. So there could be quite a break in there, and that could be why we've got a leak. What I'm going to do is just put that bolt back in for a second. So if anybody's wondering why I'm leaving the bolts in, it's because they're going to be different lengths. I want to make sure I recognise where they come from and make sure they go back in the right place. The other thing is still under pressure here, still held in with the bolt. As you can see, I can move this quite freely. There's no problem with it sort of rattling around, because what we're just checking here is there isn't a big spring behind this and loads of bits that are going to drop out, but it looks to be a fairly simple unit. Right, so bolt 1, bolt 2, both top bolts are the same size. The longer bolt is in the bottom, those on the bench, and our clutch should just pop out. Well, there we go. Right, so here we are with the slave cylinder. First thing, let's try and get some of the crud off it. So, in the middle here, this is our piston. That's the bit that when you pump fluid in there, moves towards us, pushes onto the rod, and that operates the clutch. In between this metal housing and that piston is a rubber seal, which looks like that, and that's what we need to change. So one of the jobs we're going to do now is use compressed air down here to force that out. Believe me, this is fraught with danger, but let's give it a go. So what I'm going to do, put my hand over the piston, stop it flying out, compressed air, tiny little click. There we are. One cylinder, one piston assembly. Something to note here is the angle of that seal. Let's bring that up a bit. Try and get it in focus. So it's tapered towards the spring. Okay. Another thing to note here is, I don't know if you can really see that, there's no real damage on the inside of this cylinder, no scores, no bits missing, it's just a little bit dirty. So we'll give all this a good clean down, give that a good clean down, new seal, refit, back on the bike, should be done by dinner. Oh, superb. Right, let's get this reassembled. So there's our seal. I don't know if this will show, but open back, taper to the front, taper goes to the spring, so it needs to go on that way. Let's see if we can just ease this on. That is tight, but there she is. refit the spring. Just make sure this is clean. Throw it across the workshop. Beautiful. Right. So, you see a little bit more brake fluid in there, brake cleaner I mean. What I'm going to do now, just make sure there's nothing lurking in there. Dry off any remaining. So, it's part and parcel of our reassembly. I'm going to take some brake fluid. I'm going to just put that round the inside of there. I'm going to wet this seal. And the reason for that is when we reassemble all of this, we just want that to pop in. Okay. Hang on a minute. Okay, can anyone tell me why this was leaking and what the problem was? So we're going to pump fluid in this side of the chamber. That's going to put pressure in here onto that seal. Think about the shape of the seal. It's tapered. Does that mean that fluid will pass this seal? If the seal was the other way, the fluid gets behind the edge here, forcing the seal onto the wall. This way, it's forcing the seal off of the wall. And that's what I think had happened. Make sense? I think we need to change that seal round. So now what we've got is the seal pointing in the other direction, and we've got to get it back in here. So I might be able to do this on camera, I might not. I don't really want it to go in crooked. With a little bit of help, that's now got that in. Seal's pointing in the right direction. Let's get it on. Get the brake bleeder on. And get some brake fluid. So first thing we're going to do is top up the master. Position the handlebars of the masters as level as it can be. Bit of cloth around it just to try and catch any spills. And I'm just going to operate the lever gently. And although you guys can't see it, what's happening here is air bubbles are coming out of the master slowly. And that means that the master's going to start to be effective and pump. So I'm going to crack open the bleed nipple now. Hold to the bar, shut the bleed nipple, open up, and repeat. In fact, I'm just going to pump this a bit and see if we can encourage a bit of fluid. Yeah, I see the fluids dropping in the master. And I can feel some pressure already. Right. Believe it or not, that feels almost perfect. Wow, that's firm. Well guys, that's it. Bike's fixed. Definitely seems like the seal was in the wrong way. Definitely seems to have been improved. I do, however, have a big apology to make. So it's all right doing all of this, but you have to remember to press record, which is why there's no footage of me actually reassembling the slave back onto the bike. There you go, best laid plans of man and mice. But the important thing is, bike's back in good order. So I'm not going to be riding it until next weekend now. Come Saturday, we'll have a look, make sure the fluid level's still as good, make sure we've still got good actuation, make sure we've got no leaks and that everything's put back properly. And then if all's good, out for a spin. So thank you very much for bearing with me. As I say, bike's back together, quite excited. And I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.